To what number are we up to? 866. The 866 Lifestyle, Environment, Heritage and Resilience Committee meeting. Whenever we gather, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners and Aboriginal people of these lands and waters, and we acknowledge all their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions, as well as Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to our community. Awesome. I think I've got a full group of councillors today. Yeah, but I've also got Councillor Gates with us. Also got Councillor Taylor that's come in to say good day. Yes, Councillor Taylor is here to have some biting remarks. That Councillor Doran, you will get extra points for that sort of dad joke. We've missed that from Councillor Vorster, but it's great that you brought that back to the team. Wonderful. I don't want to divert from the agenda, but yes, absolutely, Councillor Doran. Wonderful. There's no leaves of absence, and it'd be great to have someone confirm the minutes for me. Councillor Curtis, thank you. Councillor Marshall has seconded that. So moved by Councillor Curtis, seconded by Councillor Marshall. All those in favour of adopting the minutes? Thank you. Motion is carried. We have two start items, and I think we want to unstar 6.1 for some questions. Is that right, Councillor Gates? The only other start item we have is the forward planning schedule. Did anyone have any adjustments to that, or may I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Castro. Seconded, Councillor Curtis. Moved, Councillor Castro. Seconded, Councillor Curtis. This is the forward planning schedule we're dealing with today. All those in favour? A forward planning schedule is adopted. Our first presentation is relating to the McCoys Creek Wetland Conservation Area, which is pretty exciting news, and I think it's being presented by Lexi today. Lexi has not prepared a song and dance, but has prepared a great presentation. She does bring a big smile. Great to have you with us, Lexi. Tell us about McCoys.
Good morning. So, McCoys Creek Conservation Area is one of our existing conservation estates, and we have applied to have the area recognised as conserved area under the OECM framework, which is the other effective area-based conservation measures. The beauty of it is it provides a lot of flexibility. It's not a legally binding agreement and therefore can be revoked at any time, but does recognise the biodiversity values for the long term that we are seeking on that site and contributes to the national 30 by 30 target, which for those who aren't familiar is the 30% protection of land mass and 30% protection of marine areas by 2030.
Great. Is there any other local governments in Australia who are in this?
This would be the second.
Second, okay.
And the first local government.
First local government.
So huge
second
coup
area,
for the city.
First local government.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Very significant.
There's no other presentation, is there?
No, there isn't a presentation.
Yeah, Councillor Gates, did you want to pose your questions?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As everyone knows, I'm not on this committee, but I came because this item was on today.
And you're also always welcome, Councillor Gates.
Thank you very much. I would like to especially thank the officers for this. I think it's a wonderful initiative. The only concern that I had is the maintenance surrounding the area and really proximate to it. I've had a number of complaints in recent months, several, about the lack of maintenance of the water body adjacent and growth of weeds over the pathways around it, and it abuts this site. And so, given we're going to be trying to conserve this area, I felt that it might be worth officers having a look at the maintenance, because throughout this report it suggests that we have sufficient resources currently to protect the area and manage the area into the future. But I would really be grateful if I could have an outline of what the management plan might be, and if officers could review what's already occurring in the perimeter of the new conservation area, because we wouldn't want weed growth to enter that new conservation area.
So there's a map on page 14.
Yes.
Could you identify the area for councillors that you're kind of nominally referring to?
Well, I have an outline here that I can pass around.
Yeah, and is it
I can give it to the officers. I mean, it doesn't mean anything to anyone else. But see, I'll show you the green strip. I won't be able to reach.
No, that's all right. We'll get the general area. Can we get a step ladder for Councillor Gates?
That green bit.
That bit there. That green bit there. I'll come over.
So that whole area there.
This area through here?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the area that is of most concern.
And it's
not within the conservation area.
But it's still a maintenance issue.
Either that's it.
And do we know, maybe a direct question to the team, do we know who is the asset custodian of that external asset to this reserve area?
Through the chair, we're not 100% sure, but we're pretty sure that it is Natural Areas Conservation, part of their assets, and
Yes.
more than happy to come back to Councillor Gates with a plan around the maintenance schedule for the conservation area, but also detail around complaints that may have been received for that area and ongoing management of the adjacent area.
Would you mind maybe preparing a briefing note before full council for all councillors, just so they can consider
Sure.
it in context?
Happy to
I
do
think
that.
the wetland area is kind of what we're talking about today, or the reserve area is what we're talking about today. This is a bit outside, but I think that briefing note will be helpful to everyone if it's okay.
Yes.
Councillor Gates, did you have any other questions?
No, I don't. I'm grateful for the report, and I think it's a good initiative. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor.
Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair. Just had one question on the recommendation, the point B, where it talks about as a place to visit for nature-based recreation. Just wondering if that's the existing activities that are happening there, or through this work, would that unlock nature-based recreation, and what is that likely to be?
Yeah, through the chair, I think that there's opportunity to expand that. So there's a lot of work happening in the area. You're probably really familiar with the Northern Koala Corridor. There's a lot of activity between a number of partners, and certainly it's a space that we're restoring actively and hoping to encourage more access to as a place to carry out nature-based rec. But there's definitely further opportunity to expand on that in the space.
Happy with that? Great. Awesome. Councillor Gates.
I just want to check with you, Chair, and with the officers. I had written in my agenda when I did it that a report be presented to Council outlining the proposed management intent for the area. It's probably not necessary since the officers are aware of the question that I've asked today.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd like to propose a change, we could. I feel like the briefing note before full council will be sufficient, and particularly since that area you've referred to isn't actually included in the reserve.
Okay, happy.
Is that all right? Great. Councillor Martin, now that you've got your question answered in relation to the nature-based tourism, are you happy to move the item, by any chance?
Yeah, happy to move it. Thank you.
Anyone else want to second it? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. So the mover in Councillor Martin, a seconder in Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Martin, how comfortable do you feel in ceding opening remarks to Councillor Gates?
I'm very comfortable to do that. Thank you, Chair.
A great initiative, and it's non-binding, which means it can be monitored, and should there be an issue into the future that we need, we can rescind it. But a great move in the right direction, and an honour, I think, really, to be the first local government in Queensland to be offered a conserved area.
Yep.
That's great, Councillor Gates. Councillor Martin, would you like to? Does anyone want to speak against conserved areas or just the environment in general? No. Councillor Martin, do you want to close? All right. Let's take the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Lexi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And DJ, awesome. Great to have you as well. Quiet assassin in the background. Next up, we have a conversation about the Gold Coast Biosecurity Plan, which is a legislative obligation that we have to adopt each year. And I think it's being presented by Ian Jamieson. Great to have you with us, Ian.
Through the chair. Thank you for that warm welcome. Good morning, councillors. My name's Ian Jamieson. I'm Senior Biosecurity Officer here with the City. And today I'm pleased to present the annual progress report on the Biosecurity Plan. Our biosecurity plan is a plan for the entire city. It's a legal requirement under the Biosecurity Act, and it contributes to our purpose through identifying desired management objectives for over 150 individuals or groups of invasive animals and plants. When we introduced the plan in February 25, committee members highlighted the need to track progress using benchmarks and timelines. You all advocated for creating a monitoring and reporting program, establishing review periods, and ultimately recommended preparing an annual progress update. A key commitment of the plan is the eradication of 10 invasive species by 2032. Today's presentation will focus on the progress of that initiative. Now, I've been told some people find Alan Kohler's nightly finance segments mesmerising.
Yes, that's true, Ian.
Today I'm leaning into that.
Can't wait.
All right, while my voice may not be as soothing, I'm hoping the following graphs are as compelling as Alan's, and the data, and so let's see if these graphs can do the heavy lifting for me.
So far, great, but keep going.
So far, so good?
Yeah.
Okay, so our first one up is fire ants. Councillors, did you know that fire ants bite onto your skin and then actually inject a chemical sting on you? No? Well, you do now. So just to explain this graph, what you're looking at here is there's 3 different programs underway in the city for fire ants. The first line, or the red line there, is eradication. These treatments are completed by the National Fire Ant Program. This treatment goes for 2 years, and then clearance involves 5 years of surveillance. If reefer are detected during those 5 years, it goes back to eradication treatments. The suppression area of the city is completed by land managers, including council. So that's done with support from Biosecurity Queensland, and more detailed reporting on the suppression treatments are available through the council dashboard, Fire Ant Reporting Dashboard. The Fire Ant GC is where we want to be. So that's where the fire ant program has measurable evidence that fire ants no longer exist in that area. So councillors, the following graphs are all going to use the same axes and legends to show how over time sites move from a new detection, which we refer to as a new active site, through active management, an active site, to confirmed clearance based on measurable evidence, a cleared site. Our second species is the wild rabbit. This requires 2 years and no detections for an eradication. And if progress continues and there's no new detections, we will see rabbits eradicated from the city by 2027. Did you know there was only 24 rabbits released in Australia back in 1859, councillors? And that in 70 years, it took them to colonise 70% of Australia. So the work being done by our team to remove 13 rabbits from a property doesn't sound like a lot, but if left unchecked, they can quickly establish a large population in the city.
Hence the phrase, breeding like rabbits.
Thank you, Ken. Red-eared slider turtles. So this program is led by the Department of Primary Industries, Biosecurity Queensland. You'll see on this graph here, the cleared sites happened quite early in the piece. These were pet detections. So people keep red-eared slider turtles as illegal pets. When they escape or are released, they're captured, seized and destroyed. Unfortunately, we have a site in Division 11 where they are naturalised. They are living in one of the lake systems there.
Councillor Doran.
This one site has multiple turtles, and we know that because Biosecurity Queensland deployed cameras and use AI technology to differentiate between red-eared slider turtles and native turtles.
Great.
The difficulty with turtles is capturing them. An example, last trapping activity undertaken in Westlake was done in January 26. 10 traps were deployed over 4 trapping days, checked twice a day, no turtles were captured.
Uh-oh. Sneaky turtles.
Mexican bean tree.
I beg to differ, but go on. Councillor Jamison, you have the floor.
That's okay. Mexican bean trees, they're from Mexico. They're called the bean tree because they have bean-like flowers on them. They also grow tiny detachable packets of food, especially to feed ants, and these ants then live inside the hollow stems of the plant. In return, the ants aggressively attack anything that tries to eat the leaves, and it's basically a plant security contract. Okay, yellow fever tree is our next one. This is an African native from swampy river areas. The yellow comes from the colour of its bark, and the fever is from the swampy areas it was associated with. It's brought into Australia as an ornamental tree, and while it's prized by plant collectors for its striking aesthetics, that very popularity creates massive challenge as tracking it across the city is extremely difficult. Mexican feathergrass.
This graph is excellent. Go on.
Thank you. Mexican feathergrass, it sounds soft, delicate and harmless, but it's actually a very invasive grass. If introduced, it threatens millions of hectares of pasture and native grasslands. In 2008, plants were imported and sold under incorrect names through retail nurseries. Over 4,000 plants were distributed across several states. Tracebacks identified 2 infestations in the city. And I'll comment on that graph now, if you like, because the work we've done's highlighted that without having reporting in place, these things can slip through the cracks. And we are quite confident that those 2 sites are cleared, but we will confirm that this year.
Can I ask a question? In some of the graphs you've used, there's been clearing activity or eradication activity occurring, but then the on-track for eradication from the city is like quite a few years in advance. Is there like different measures for what eradication is for a different type of tree? Or...
Yes, through the chair. Yes, there is. So depending on the species is how long it takes to clear it from the city.
Right. So, once we've eradicated the sites or got rid of the sites, sometimes that might be a 2-year period and sometimes it might have to be an 8-year period.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay.
Sometimes it's actually 40 years.
Wow, before we can say it's eradicated. Right, okay. Go on.
Where was
I? Kudzu, I think.
Kudzu. Kudzu. This one's really interesting for us plant nerds. It is something that can grow 30 centimetres a day in ideal conditions. A single plant can produce hundreds of different plants as it roots at the nodes, and it fixes its own nitrogen, so actually creates a better environment for itself, hence its invasiveness. Athel pine. So most of you know mangroves survive salt to build ecosystems. Athel pine survives salt to destroy ecosystems. It has the ability to actually translocate salt into its leaves. It then drops those leaves on the ground and stopping any other plants from germinating underneath it. It's all of these plants have these characteristics that make them invasive. Honey locust, I mentioned before about a 40-year life cycle or clearance cycle on honey locust. This is a plant whose origins trace back to the Ice Age, or even before that. This means the plant coexisted with North American megafauna, such as mammoths. So having evolved in that type of ecosystem, the seed has an extremely hard-coated shell on it, which means that when it's in the environment, it takes a long time to actually allow it to germinate and seed. So vigilance over 40 years is required to ensure that there's no more weedlings that come up.
Right.
Telegraph weed. So this is something that is only found in Queensland, is only found on the Gold Coast. Proof of freedom for this one is no detections for 4 years. It's called telegraph weed because it primarily invades along telegraph lines and other easements.
Okay.
Okay, so in summary, the reporting framework shows us that 6 species are on track, 3 are progressing well but need additional effort beyond 2032, largely due to new detections and also that seed life and viability. 1 species requires close monitoring. I don't know whether you can guess which one that is, but it's red-eared slider turtles for those playing along at home. This level of clarity, it's a result of our internal growth mindset and strong external partnerships. Together, these efforts have built systems and processes that enable data-driven decisions. And this is providing Council with a clear evidence-based picture of our current standing and where continued effort is required. This level of clarity allows us to move decisively into the next phase of our strategy, where we will refine our reporting and ensure our biosecurity implementation remains robust through 2025 and beyond. Looking ahead, our next steps focus on 3 strategic areas. First, we will maintain momentum with continuing the implementation of the current plan. Secondly, we will initiate a targeted review of the plan. And thirdly, we will deliver phase 2 of the reporting framework. Overall, the framework you've seen today provides Council with a clear, scalable and evidence-based way to track biosecurity outcomes across the city. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take any questions and appreciate your support of the proposed recommendations.
Thanks, Ian. Does anyone have any questions other than Councillor Doran? No? Did you have any? You do, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Just on the community engagement, just wondering if you could talk a bit about like what is that? Is that a have your say? Is that multiple divisions? What will that kind of look like?
It'll be a citywide consultation, and we'll be seeking engagement on the current plan and how it can be improved for the future.
Okay.
So the question was actually, are we going to use the GC Have Your Say platform to do that, or some other mechanism?
We're still in negotiation with
the team.
Team.
Okay.
What that will look like. But I dare say it would be Have Your Say. So.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And no doubt we'll receive a brief. If it is Have Your Say, we'll receive some sort of briefing prior to it going up.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the other question, just in the report, it talks about obviously we have our risk matrix and partnerships being opportunistic. Just wondering if there's community environment groups that we're working with that might want to get involved and help with the city. Is it work that they could do? Is it highly specialised and it's only highly trained? Or can volunteer conservation groups kind of get involved to eradicate these with you?
Through the chair, some of these require specific skills and techniques for eradication, but I think it's really important to note that the community has been integral in finding these species for us. The Mexican bean tree was through our conservation partnerships program, our Land for Wildlife. We know communities heavily involved in our Naturally GC programs, and all of these do undertake weed control works. But it's awareness raising, and it's the use of citizen science and media platforms like our Naturally GC iNaturalist app. So they can be involved, but not generally with the hands-on control, unless it's on their own properties, of course.
Just so we do clarify that, under the Biosecurity Act, it's actually private property owners that are responsible for managing pests on their own property, aren't they? And maybe the question is, to what extent can the council help private property owners with their obligations?
Yeah, through the chair, that is correct. Biosecurity is everyone's responsibility. Every landholder has that responsibility to manage these pests. There are multiple platforms and programs within council, and there is a So as part of our ONC strategy, there's currently work underway to create a mapping platform to improve availability of resources to private landholders in the city.
That's great. Awesome. Is there a time frame? I'm going to come back to you, Councillor Wilkinson. Is there a time frame for that a natural city strategy piece to be kind of launched, or maybe I can throw to Andrew for that one?
Yeah, I'll have to take that one on notice, Chair, in terms of when that update will be made available, but it will be part of the existing interactive map. So it's essentially another layer that will be included in that tool.
And can you confirm whether it's been funded in a budget yet, or is it subject to our...
It's covered by current budget.
By current operation.
Yes.
That's great news. Councillor Wilkinson, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair, and well done, Ian, on a very engaging presentation, first of all. I enjoyed it. Through you, Chair, I don't know if the team perhaps just wants to touch on how, if the community does see, for instance, any invasive plants or animal species, how they can report it to the city. And then additionally, I know that the city does work with those private landowners as well to try and manage whatever the invasive species is on their property. Maybe if we just touched on a couple of the programs that we already have existing, just for our magnitude of listeners at home, just so that they're aware.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor. So the first part of that would be report through the council's app, report a problem. That's our primary communication for the community. We also have linkages with external organisations through the Feral Scan for reporting invasive animals, and also through iNaturalist for reporting of pest plants.
Just pause on that point. So Feral Scan is an independently run app that enables members of the public to report feral pests, both animal and plant pests. Does that sound right?
Through the chair, just animal.
Just animal pests. And iNaturalist is a similar app. Could you explain that before you move on?
Through the chair, iNaturalist is a citizen science app. It's about identification of all plants and animals. But in doing so, we also pick up the pest ones, the invasive ones as well. And it has a link through the background that provides us with notifications of specific invasive plants through that.
And so if a member of the public, as kind of Councillor Wilkinson has been talking about, is using either Feral Scan or iNaturalist, they can actually have some reassurance that our city, our local government, is actually being provided information by those independent entities about those matters. Does that sound right?
Through the chair, that is absolutely right.
And do we have agreements with those entities, or do they just do it and send us messages? How does it work?
Through the chair, I believe it's all publicly available information that our GIS team taps into and brings into like our flora and fauna database or the interactive mapping tool that the ONC team is responsible for developing.
Awesome. Sorry, Councillor Wilkinson, I don't know if Ian, you were throwing to Andrew for a follow-up?
Through the chair, just in addition to the other programs that we run, obviously we engage with private landholders, Land for Wildlife program, which obviously includes information about invasive weeds and animals. We also have the Nature Conservation Assistance program as well that deals with those matters. So they're the other private landholder programs that address invasive plants and animals as part of the program.
That's great. Does that satisfy your question? Councillor Doran, did you want to ask about turtles or have any questions about turtles? Mythical. You don't ask about mythical creatures, right? Okay. One question I had was, well, actually, I've got two questions. The first is, as you might imagine, pests don't really respect local government boundaries. So, to what extent does our biosecurity plan engage and interface with biosecurity plans in local governments that are adjacent our own, or other agencies like national parks or whatever?
Yeah, through the chair. So during the consultation and preparation of the plan, we do speak with those adjoining local governments. As you'd imagine, local governments have differing priorities, and that is also within that pest plant space. However, we have great relationships with state agencies, local governments, NGOs, and try and work together because that's what's required to beat this problem.
Right. And so when a pest on this list is being eradicated or treated in Division 14, for instance, right on the boundary of New South Wales and the Gold Coast and Queensland, is there collaborative work that goes on when we're undertaking that treatment, or do we just kind of notify them, or how does that work?
Through the chair, can I provide a specific example of how that works?
Yeah.
So in North Queensland, there's a weed called Myconia, or referred to as the purple plague. It covers hillsides in Hawaii and Tahiti. It's funded through a nationally cost-shared arrangement at federal level for eradication in North Queensland. Over the last 10 years, detections in northern New South Wales has actually meant that the radius of the search area extends into Queensland. So New South Wales, the nationally funded program, and our own City Council staff just combined last week to undertake inspections in those areas across private land.
Yes.
And that's done because of the risk of this plant establishing. They actually detected a plant during that inspection.
In local government area of the Gold Coast?
In the city of Gold Coast. So I think that highlights what you're asking about, how that all comes together to actually get an outcome for the city, but also for our lovely environment that does extend outside our boundaries.
That's awesome. The last question I have actually relates to this list. So there's 10 items on this list right now, but there's lots of complaints. I mean, each of us in each, division have, like in my division, it's, giant devil's fig and giant rat tails grass, and they're like very common kind of declared pests that they're not on the list. What does it take for a pest that we're aware of to get onto this list, and how does that process work? Sorry.
Through the chair. I was hoping they might take that one for me. So the process is, this list is state-listed plants. Right. So first up, it has to be listed by the state. It's got to be having an impact across the entire state to be listed. We then take that state list, we run it through our risk assessment to look at how it's going to impact the city. and we also look at the feasibility of managing it. You know, the life cycle and everything else is brought into that. That then creates the priorities,
Yes.
and that's what we have in the plan. We have prevention species that are either found just, you know, in small patches. We have eradication species, the ones that we think we can actually get rid of. Then we start talking about species we're trying to contain to a suburb, a site, a local government. And then we have asset management species. So that's where they all sit in that scale, and the management outcomes, you know, from those differ according to, you know, the size of the infestation and the impacts on the city.
So our actions are necessarily influenced by the state's legislative processes with identifying a particular weed or pest animal. Like we can't necessarily add something to this list that's not on the state list because it's governed under the Biosecurity Act. Does that sound right?
Through the chair, no, that is not. We are able to add our own species
Right.
via a local law, and then can use the Biosecurity Act to manage that species within the city.
But again, that would be a draw on our resources that would effectively draw resources from these already other declared activities. Does that sound right?
Through the chair, it would have to be prioritised for our system. That would be the only way that we would look at it, and then we would be able to make a decision on whether or not reallocation is required.
Great, awesome. Anyone else have any other questions? If there's no other questions, I might get a mover, if you wouldn't mind. Anyone want to eradicate pests in the city? Councillor Marshall, it's one. Councillor Wilkinson is going to second that. Councillor Marshall, you can open debate if you like.
I don't know to open debate, but just thanks for the work around this. This is a new area to me. So it's fascinating to hear about all the work that goes on behind the scenes. I don't think many people in the community realise what invasive species are out there, but also how they could be involved in detection and comprehensive reports. So I appreciate you bringing that to us.
Cool. Anyone else want to speak against? All right, we'll take the vote. It was moved by Councillor Marshall, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Ian, thank you very much. It wasn't quite as good as Cola, but you're on the way. You're on the way. Like, maybe as good as Alan Colla's son, who's on the other station. Next up, we have Darren, who is presenting a piece on the biting midge management, which was a matter that came up as a general business item raised by Councillor Taylor. Darren's worked with the team on the regional mosquito management group for many, many years in our pest management team, and you're a legend, Darren. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taser, for your kind words. And thank you, councillors, for giving me the opportunity to talk about our biting midge program. I will go through the history, what we do, what we've changed, and how we compare to other councils in the area. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners, the Aboriginal people of these lands and waters, and we acknowledge all the descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions, as well as Torres Strait South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to the community. So canal estates were predominantly constructed in the city between 1950 and 1970. The idea was to give residents access to clean sandy beaches, access to the Broadwater with minimal wave action. They predominantly affect Divisions 4, 10, 12 and 13. There are some other canals in the city in other divisions, but they generally don't have the sandy beaches. The sandy beaches are what cause the biting midge problem. There's a native biting midge species, scientific name Culicortes molestus. That is its correct name. Molestus by nature, molestus by name. It's a savage biter, and it breeds in the sandy canal beaches between the high water mark and the low water mark, commonly known as the intertidal zone. You can see on this photo here, low water mark is obviously the low water mark, and then the high water mark is where the footprints begin. That's the area that we're talking about. So you've got a life cycle that involves an adult midge laying eggs in that intertidal zone, and then the remainder of the life cycle takes place in the sand. There's a larva and a pupae, and then an adult flying biting midge will emerge and fly up into people's backyards.
looking to molest. Hence the name.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
I do need some help, so continue. Historically, the city has chosen to run a larviciding program. So there's generally two options. You can treat the adults, or you can treat the larvae. Historically, the city has chosen to treat the larvae in that sand via injecting insecticide into the intertidal zone via these boom boats. And you can see what you've got there is a boat that's fitted out with a pump and a tank, which you can't see, it's below the gunnel. Draws in water from the canal, mixes it with the insecticide, then pumps it up into the boom and injects it into the sand. That boom is designed to inject the chemical 2 centimetres. The biting midge larvae are known to inhabit mainly the top 2 centimetres of sand, so just putting it on the surface doesn't work. It needs to go down into the sand. And those treatments have generally been carried out once or twice a year, historically.
Darren, I'm just going to pause you for a second. Yeah, Councillor Martin, do you want to go back to the picture?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. Just
Can we just go back one slide? Yep.
two things. Where do the larvae sit in the beach? Like, is it closer to the water where the tidal zone? You said intertidal, but is it
Darren
more
just explained it's in the gap between the low water mark and the high water mark.
Yeah. And when you said injects, but looks like it's spraying on the surface in that photo, is that seeping in, or you actually are probing in, or were probing in?
It does inject. So I've conducted a number of reviews of this program over the years, and there was a time when it did used to spray on the surface, and there was a couple of problems with that. As I said, majority of larvae are actually below the surface, so if it doesn't get there, it doesn't affect those larvae. And secondly, if you only put it on the surface, it's got more opportunity to run off into the water. So those jets are specifically designed to penetrate the sand, and we tested that with food dye. So we put food dye in there so we could actually see that it's injecting where it needs to be and affecting the area that it needs to be.
Okay, cool. Great. Thanks, Darren. Go on.
In 2023, City's fleet advised us that the boom boats and the chase boats no longer met the requirements of the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, or AMSA, and this prompted another review, and several limitations with the program were identified at that point. The three main ones were regulatory challenges, operational impracticalities, and environmental risks. So there is no product registered for biting midge larvae in Australia. There's no product registered for that use. So we have to apply to the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority to get an off-label permit. An off-label permit allows us to use a product that is contrary to the label, what the label states. We do currently have one of those off-label permits from the APVMA for Maldacin. The problem is that the restrictions on the permit are becoming more and more onerous. Maldacin was reviewed in 2022 by the APVMA, and it was quite heavily upgraded. They decided that it was a more problematic chemical for both the environment and human health than they previously had legislated, and so we've got some pretty strict requirements that we need to meet to comply with that permit. The operational impracticalities involve constraints of tides, wind, rain, daylight. As I mentioned, the whole treatment revolves around the tide. So if we're treating at high tide, we're not getting any biting midge. So it needs to be done at low tide. So that's the main thing. We can't have a lot of wind because that's going to blow the chemical off target, and we need to have staff available. There's approximately 200 kilometres of these canal beaches. So there's 2 of these boats with 2 staff in each one, and then chase boats that run around behind them and touch up where these boats can't get in. So it's quite staff heavy. It needs to be done early in the morning to avoid people, to avoid the wind, and to get the right tide. It's extremely difficult to get all those requirements to meet up. On top of that, these boats are considered commercial vessels by AMSA, so staff require more than just a recreational speedboat licence. They require commercial licences, and they have fairly strict health requirements. They need to undergo medicals every year. And then finally, the proliferation of jetties and private boats in the canals due to the popularity of the Gold Coast over the last 10 years makes it extremely difficult for this whole program to have any impact at all on the biting midge larvae. The third one, environmental risks, I've kind of already touched on. Malathion is highly toxic to aquatic life and invertebrates, and the permit that we have includes non-target species such as soldier crabs that we're not allowed to spray, and there are quite a few areas in the canals that have actively foraging soldier crabs.
Can I ask a question just about that comment? Is there like a natural enemy of the larvae, like the shoulder crabs or other animals actually eat the larvae?
Good question. Not that we know of. One of the problems with biting midge in general is there's not a lot of research done on them because, number one, they don't generally spread any human-related diseases.
Yeah.
And number two, there's not a lot of areas in the world that suffer with them. There are certainly other areas, but they're not widespread, like a mosquito, for instance, and they don't spread disease like mosquitoes. So I'm unaware of any natural predators. I would imagine the adults would be subject to predation by things that predate on insects generally, like bats and birds and things like that. Yeah. But the larvae, I don't know, and I would think that'd be difficult for them because they're embedded in the sand, so that'd be protected essentially.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Gates.
Thanks, Chairman. Just through you, thanks for the presentation. I just wondered, the presentation suggested that areas are sprayed once or twice per year. What determines when they're sprayed?
We're just getting to the end of the presentation now.
I thought we were at the end.
Oh, yeah, this is the last slide, or?
I can answer that if you like. Through you,
please do.
Chair. It's generally those constraints that I mentioned before, the lining up of the tides in the morning, the wind, the staff, everything's got to align. It's a very small window, and it takes us months to get through and do the whole program. There's also, obviously, we do other work involving mosquito control that has to be taken into account. So it's generally, we get it done when we can. We don't have the luxury of saying that this is when we're going to do it. There are certainly times when we prefer to do it. The biting midge does generally undergo a process in its life cycle which is known as overwintering, where they don't emerge as much from the beach in winter, and so leading into that period, coming out of that period just before they have a mass emergence in spring is when we would prefer to do it, but it's not always possible if everything doesn't line up.
I think there's a few slides left to talk about what we currently do.
Can I ask a question to that?
Of course you can.
I suppose my question too is, we've been doing it for years, so we've always dealt with, I presume, tides. We've always been dealing with conditions and weather. So for a long period of time, we've been able to manage that. What's changed now in all those considerations? Because the program's been going for a long time. What's changed?
Well, this slide kind of goes through the reasons, but Darren, why don't you summarise it again?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. It's an increased restrictions on the permit that we've got. So we now know that chemical that we're using, which is the only one we have access to, is increasingly toxic to both the environment and human health. And the proliferation of jetties and I've got a photo later on that will kind of show you what I'm talking about, make it difficult to have any impact on the biting midge, or the impact that we used to be able to have, because we can't get into those areas. One of the restrictions on the permit that we've got now, I'll just take you back to this slide, is we're not allowed to spray within half a metre of the water's edge. And you can see that's what's happening in this slide. So that half a metre between where the spray's going in and the water's edge, those larvae aren't getting affected. And that combined with not being able to get in behind jetties and boats and other things that are out there now that weren't out there before. We don't have the free rein that we had, the long-running clean beach like we've got in this photo, and it means that we're not impacting the midge larvae anymore. It's got to the point where it's not worth doing the program because of the we're not having an impact.
You got another question?
Can I just follow a question? So how long has that change come in place? Because obviously the program's been going for a number of years. Obviously there was a change in the conditions of how we manage the spraying. When did that come in?
Through you, Chair. So the APVMA reviewed Maldacin or malathion, it's the same thing, in 2022, and the restrictions on the permits increased. The rest of it has just been a slow burn. You know, the proliferation of jetties, etc., over the last 5 to 10 years, because of the popularity of the Gold Coast and the increasing population, it's just slowly proliferated. But the boats not being compliant in 2023 was what prompted this review and what prompted us to change what we're doing.
I'm going to pause at that point. I'm going to pause at that point and kind of defer those questions to the end. I want to make sure there's context for the questions in the actual work that we are doing. So can we just go on to the bit that we are doing, and then I'll go back to questions.
No problem. So this photo is the one I was talking about with the jetty proliferations. That's Paradise Point, and you can see that that's an extremely difficult run for a boat of that size with a big boom to try and get through. So the conclusions of the program review were that given the constraints, larval control is neither efficient nor sustainable, and even if resumed, its impact on overall midge numbers is likely to remain marginal, and the recommendation was made to replace larval control with adult control. If you remember, I started out saying that there is two methods to control biting midge. So since 2024, so the last canal program, larval program, was undertaken in 2023. And 2024 and 2025, we have replaced that with adult midge control, otherwise known as adulticiding, via ultra-low volume misting. Ultra-low volume misting, or ULV misting, targets adult midges to reduce nuisance levels quickly. And a point I forgot to make about the larval program is it doesn't affect the adult population immediately. It's only affecting the larvae. So the adult biting midge that are out there biting people, they're still going to be there until they die, finish their life cycle. The idea of the larval program is to reduce the emergence of the larvae so that there's not as many adults out there. But one of the key strengths of this program is it does reduce populations immediately. There's no APVMA off-label permit required. There's plenty of products out there registered for this use. There's lower staff training burden because we already use this method for mosquito control, and all you need is a driver's licence and a pest management licence, which most of our staff do have. And then we have the dual benefit of reducing mosquito populations concurrently. So the product that we use will reduce not only biting midge populations in the area, but mosquitoes as well.
On that one? Yeah, go on.
On what we are doing?
Yeah.
Because my question is, like, looking at that photo, looks like it's in the bush. And so I'm just wondering, Are they driving onto the beach and spraying that? Are they doing the street? How does that relate to the area on the shoreline that fogging or whatever it is, misting, would sort of help those canal properties?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. That's a great question. So it is through the streets. Unfortunately, I didn't have a good photo of a truck running through the streets, but yes, they run through the streets, up and down the streets. And the idea, so what I said earlier was when the larvae emerge, they'll fly up into people's backyards and they'll look for a harbourage area. So they are looking for anywhere out of the wind, out of the sun. They don't like direct sunlight and they don't like the wind. So they're looking for, bushes, trees, under eaves, patios, that kind of thing. So this product is designed to drift. It's very, very low volume, hence the name ultra low volume. It's designed to drift into people's backyards and into adult midge harbourage areas.
All right, so we've got Councillor Taylor, then Councillor. There's actually so many questions here. You know what? I reckon we're going to get to the end. Can you write your questions down and let's do it at the end? Thank you, Darren. I'm going to let you get through your thing. Sorry, mate.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. This graph represents what I was saying earlier. We've been able to replace the larval program with the adult program, and it hasn't affected customer requests. So I've got Division 4, 12, 10 and 13 on this graph as they're the predominant biting midge affected divisions. And you can see that in 2019, 2020, the customer requests were much higher, even though we were doing the larval program. Came down in 2021 and 2022. They went up in 2023, even though we were still doing the larval program. And we stopped in 2024, and requests did go up slightly, and then they've come back down again in 2025. So we've been able to keep the customer request over those 2 years below what they were essentially when we were doing the program, the biting midge larval program. We've been able to keep the customer requests essentially the same by doing the adult sighting program. The next slide just is to illustrate that we have utilised the resources from the larval program into the adult sighting program, and this is the number of ULV programs we've run each year in Division 4, 10, 12 and 13, and so you can see they've increased significantly in 24 and 25 because we were able to divert the resources from the larval program into the adult sighting program.
Sorry.
We were also asked to benchmark what we're doing against other councils, and we did that. Benchmarking confirms that the City of Gold Coast operational service exceeds those of comparable local governments. The Sunshine Coast Council, Brisbane City Council and other South East Queensland jurisdictions do not conduct larval control or adult control for biting midge. Their services focus solely on providing residents with educational material about personal protection and habitat management. This comparison illustrates that the Gold Coast residents have historically received a significantly higher level of service than comparable councils. However, it also demonstrates that other councils consider active treatment neither mandatory nor operationally appropriate under current environmental and regulatory conditions. The City's current approach, land-based ULV misting, adult sighting, aligns more closely with regional practice, delivering a realistic balance between service efficiency, environmental responsibility and regulatory compliance. So just to rehash key points, biting midge larval sighting program was reviewed in 2023. Several limitations were identified. Since 2023, the larval sighting program has been replaced with ULV misting or adult sighting. Service request trends indicate ULV misting alone is meeting community expectations, and benchmarking confirms that the City of Gold Coast operational service exceeds these of comparable local governments, and the City's current approach, which is land-based ULV misting or adult sighting, delivers a realistic balance between service efficiency, environmental responsibility and regulatory compliance.
Thanks, Darren. Appreciate you providing an informative presentation. I've got questions that I think from raised hands. I had Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Wilkinson, then Councillor Kirsten, then I think I had Councillor Martin So that's the order we're going to go, and we'll do those first. Councillor Taylor, you're first up.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, if you don't mind. I've been itching to get to this item.
You've been itching. Wow. Wow.
Could I?
Oh, gosh. We might actually go to Councillor Wilkinson first.
Can I continue?
It's all right. You got the floor. It's all good.
The fogging program was already part of our program. My understanding was we had two parts of it. It was treating the sand as phase one, and the fogging was always part of the full program. So my understanding over the period of time, there was always those two components of it.
Let's clarify that first up. So explain to us what was happening with the adulticiting program prior to the cessation of the other bit.
Through you, Chair, yes, correct, Councillor. However, the service level with the biting midge adulticiting was significantly lower, predominantly due to mosquito control. So those truck-mounted sprayers are used for mosquito control. Mosquito control was always given priority because we were conducting a larviciding program. Since we've stopped the biting midge larviciding program, we've given biting midge equal priority, if not more priority, in these divisions, and that's illustrated through that graph that I showed, where we've significantly increased our ULV programs.
Councillor Taylor, you still have the floor. What else have you got?
Yeah, I suppose there's some questions from your presentation is, I know you've got Brisbane City Council and Sunshine Coast, but how do those waterways compare to the Gold Coast in relation to what we've got? So if we're talking about a comparison, how do they compare to what we have here?
Good question, through you, Chair. I don't think there's really anything anywhere else in the world other than maybe Florida that compares to the Gold Coast in terms of waterways with sandy canal beaches. There is some areas in the Caribbean as well, but Sunshine Coast definitely do have waterways. They're just not as extensive as ours, and they do have biting midge. Brisbane City Council have a different species, Curocortis ornatus, which is arguably a more severe biter. That breeds in a different habitat. It's mainly creeks that run off the Brisbane River. So they definitely do have biting midge. They definitely do deal with biting midge, but it's not as extensive as what we've got.
Thank you. If you mind if I
You've still got the floor. Yeah.
Look, I suppose from my perspective is when you say there was no increase, the reason I found out about the change was because it didn't come back to us, was because there was an increase of complaints from my perspective. Yeah. So I started then asking the question, what has changed? And that's when we found that there was a change. So when you say there's been no change, I did notice from my perspective in my area there was a change, which made me start asking more questions, and that's how we found there'd been a change. So,
was there a question with it? You can debate a bit later on.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I'll keep going.
You'll have a chance to debate.
So I suppose I'm talking about the product itself, and I suppose I'm interested in what we were using. There's been a change, but
this is the Malapian chemical.
Yeah. So we'd been using it for many years previously. That same product. And there hadn't been concerns prior to then. I suppose my concern is we've been using it for such a long period of time, for years, and now it is a problem. I have concerns about us actually using it for a period of time. Like, what were those changes that changed from then to now?
So the question is, what changed relating to the legislation about using Malapian? Is that how you say it?
Malson,
yeah. What changed in the use of that chemical? Or the provisions around the use of that chemical?
Through you, Chair, yes. So I did mention them both before. No spraying active foraging soldier crabs, and not getting the chemical closer than 0.5 metre to the water.
So it was only the method that changed.
Well, it's still poisonous, but
correct.
Science evolves over time. I'm not answering the question on behalf of Darren, but soldier crabs were dying.
Yep. And the method changed.
The method, sorry?
The restrictions around the method changed as a result of the is it APVMA?
APVMA, yes.
Which is the people who manage the boats said you can't do this at this point, which made it less effective.
The APVMA reviewed Malson in 2022 and changed, made the use of it more restrictive, which is what I just outlined. And then in 2023, Fleet notified us that AMSA had also increased their restrictions around the boats, which made us unable to use those boats. We couldn't upgrade the boats, the same boats. We would have needed completely new boats, which would have been bigger and wider and made it even more difficult to navigate in amongst the boats and the jetties.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Changes to the chemical rules, changes to the boat rules, and the relevant cost to the city meant that we just stopped doing it because it was costing too much.
But the question there would be, if ever was a increase and we found concerns, we could look at improving our method or our vehicles or our boats to provide an outcome.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't think so. The decision was taken because we just weren't impacting the larval population enough. The increasing restrictions on both the boats and the permit meant that we're not impacting the larval population in the beach like we were able to prior to those restrictions.
Which has got to do with how far from the shore, how far from the water you are restricted in.
Correct. So we're all those restrictions mean that we're not able to access the larval habitat where they're breeding as much as we were previously.
Gotcha. Councillor, is that
So
clear?
again, I suppose my next question was, but I think that might have answered the question, it's irrelevant of our actual boat usage or what we could make modifications to it or the replacement of it, because even if we did replace it,
we'd still have the
you're saying
restrictions
we'd
on
still
where.
have a restriction that may not create their income.
Wouldn't allow the thing to get to the larval habitat.
Because we weren't allowed to under the new regulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just through the chair, also it would make delivery of the service a lot more operationally inefficient because the boats required are significantly larger than the current ones.
Yes. You still got the floor, Councillor Taylor. Okay. Councillor Wilkinson, you're next.
Thanks, Chair, and I'm glad Councillor Taylor got his questions out because I know he was chomping at the bit for that one.
Champing at the bit, not chomping. But that's okay.
I use the word chomping. Is it, Tim? Oh.
It's champing, yeah.
I
You
substitute it
chomp
with
on
chomping.
a chocolate bar, you champ at the bit in your mouth.
First, thanks through you, Chair, to Darren. I think that was a really good presentation, and you actually answered a few questions that I had in relation to the mosquito spraying because I wanted to know whether or not that was the same spray being used for both programs. The questions I've got, I guess, relate to when we talk about the intertidal areas. Are the larvae more prone to those white sandy strips opposed to natural canals where mangroves grow? I'm just interested to know, is there a particular preference for where their breeding grounds are with that tidal flow area? Can you give me some clarification on that?
Good question.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, great question. There's a number of different species that have different habitats that they prefer exactly the same as mosquitoes. We've got over 300 different species of mosquito in Australia, and biting midge on the Gold Coast, we've probably got maybe 5 species that affect residents. The species that breeds in the canals do prefer that white sandy canal beach. They will breed in the muddier sort of beaches, but they prefer the white sandy flocculated sand with low wave action. There are species that breed in mangroves along the shoreline. That's their preferred habitat. But those areas in the city they're not as prolific as the sandy canal beaches.
And probably a bit further from houses.
Generally, yes. There's some in the like Currumbin Creek and Tullabudgera Creek that are relatively close, but again, they're nowhere near as prolific as the canal beaches.
Yeah, midges that breed in mangroves probably don't affect humans as much because there's less houses nearby, whereas the canals are so dense. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Wilkinson.
No, and it's a fair point to be made. I guess, do we have any data that you talk about the different species? Do we have anything that could be circulated to councillors for our understanding of that, I guess, better?
Gosh, we need a new representative on the Regional Mosquito Management Group. Are you still on that one? Because I think Councillor Wilkinson just volunteered himself to join that group.
No, I guess the reason for my questioning is that I'm just trying to get an understanding. Obviously, there's different species. I'm just trying to work out. I do have canal areas, Lotus Creek in particular, they do have residential people living on these areas as well. So I'm just interested in that respect, and I'll get to another question later. But
so first, your question is there information that can be provided to the public and councillors to help people understand the different types of midges and mosquitoes? Can we do that?
We can do that. I don't believe it is out there at the moment. There is a
It's a good suggestion.
There is a biting midge web page on the council's web page, but it focuses on the canal
Is it
estates,
possible
not
to
others.
turn it into a graphic that could be shared on social media or put into a newsletter? Maybe
Through the
you, Darren,
chair,
too.
we can have a chat to comms and engagement about that in terms of pushing out some information.
All right, back to you, Councillor Wilkinson. That was a good
Chair,
suggestion.
and by all means, I'm happy to. Before we go to any full extremities, I'm happy to explore that as just what that could look like. I'm not sure how much work would be entailed in pulling it all together, but absolutely welcome to work with the officers.
We can change the graphic design to your divisional officer.
Happy to do that. I guess it kind of feeds into what I was going to ask next in relation to, given that this seems to be a service that, in comparison to other LGAs, we offer above and beyond, I would say. Can you walk me through as far as both the public education, I know that we've got it on our website, but also is there any kind of notification that goes to the public when the ULV misting occurs? Is that something that happens? I don't know whether it's at times sporadic or if there's an increase in complaints that we then do more. Can you just walk me through how that process looks?
Yeah. How do we let the public know we're doing it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, are you specifically asking about biting midge and mosquito or mosquito?
No, sticking with I'm trying not to go down the mosquito path. I'm trying to stick just to the biting midge.
Thank you. They are fairly similar anyway. Yes, we do. We do notify. We put an alert on the city webpage 24 hours before we adulticide. We also have a service where residents who do not like adulticiding can register with us, and we will notify them when we're going to be in the area, so they can either leave or close up and avoid the area. To your point about when do we do it, it's based off surveillance, which is trapping, and also customer requests. And with the biting midge specifically, they are known, their life cycle revolves, because it revolves around the tides, that means it revolves around the moon. So they are known to emerge in bigger numbers around the new and the full moon. So we can also put schedule our programs around those times.
So just to make sure the answer to that question is clear, there is a subscription service that a member of the public can utilise to be informed when ULV is occurring in their area. Does that sound correct?
Correct.
And there is a notification on the city's website, on the pest management pages, letting them know that we are actually doing adulticiding?
Correct. It's called City Alert. So any sort of works that council's doing goes on there. So residents can go on there and put in mosquito or midge as a keyword, and it'll come up with anything that we're doing in relation to those areas.
All right. Does that answer your question sufficiently, Councillor Milford?
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. And then my last one. Is there perhaps even just a simple mapping that you could potentially provide even councillors, just of the routes that you currently operate? So, for instance, we used Runaway Bay as an example before. If you're using the road network to deliver that particular service, do you have a map overall area that, I guess, gets done across the entire year that you can show councillors the route for how this is distributed, I guess?
Through you, Chair, I think we could do that.
Great. Good questions. Thanks, Councillor Wilkinson. I had Councillor Curtis, then I've got Councillor Martin, and I'm going back to Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. With the larvicide program, was it only man-made canals that we were applying that treatment to? Because, oh my goodness, because I have quite a few naturally occurring sandy foreshore. They present as canals, but they're not canals. But were we doing them in those, or are they not part of the scope on the previous?
No, sorry, through you, Chair. We're only able to do man-constructed canals. Natural areas are prohibited from having this insecticide sprayed in them. However, You will notice that your division receives even more ULV treatments than Councillor Taylor's, and that's due to both the fact that you do have more mosquito breeding areas as well as biting midge, and those biting midge areas that were unable to be larvicided.
So this wouldn't occur on any of the, through you, Chair, through the foreshore areas that are along the Broadwater. This is only occurring in the man-made canals, or was only occurring in the man-made canals, not along the the Broadwater facing foreshore, or for example, Loaders Creek would never have got it because it's a naturally occurring waterway, Bigger Creek.
Correct, not in the Broadwater, no.
And that's because it's prohibited in those areas.
It is
not a judgment call, it's prohibited.
It is prohibited, correct. We just to put your mind maybe at ease as well, we have sampled some of those Broadwater areas, and it's really difficult to find significant larval populations. And I think it's just because the Broadwater has a lot more wind, a lot more wave action from boats, and they prefer not a lot of wave action. So I don't think we're really missing anything by not treating those foreshore areas of the Broadwater.
Yep. And for context, Chair, there's only one location in Division 4 where I've noticed an increase in complaints of late, and it is Boat Harbour Park, which is a naturally occurring, very canal-style inlet away from the Broadwater. But it seems to me that it wouldn't have been on a previous insecticide treatment, larvae treatment previously anyway, because it's naturally occurring. So I can provide that feedback. When you brought the complaints graph up, if we could see that again, was that the total number of complaints, as in we're talking only just over 60, or is that extrapolate of hundreds or something like that?
The light green bar is total complaints over the whole year.
So we're just over, so about 60 for 2025.
Correct.
Okay. I noticed online that, Chair, that we don't have any online reporting either through the app, but you can only do it via phone. So it might be why councillors perhaps get that feedback.
But to be fair, just to answer that question or to touch on that, when a councillor sends a councillor request through, does it form part of this data we're looking at here?
It does.
Great. So our councillor requests are part of the data you're looking at right now.
Great. And then last one, Chair, if you wouldn't mind going to the image of the canal system that I think you said was Paradise Point. So I'm just trying to get my head around how to explain to residents what the ULV fogging program looks like in comparison to what we were doing before, which I think was easy for customers to understand, that they were having their sand injected with this stuff. So the fogging program has a truck drive around the street fronts and spray the front or fog the front of these properties, and it sort of dissipates to the canal side.
Through you, Mr. Chair, any road that you see there, they will drive down the road and they will drive back up the road again. So these look like they're mainly cul-de-sacs, which a lot of canal estates are by nature. So yes, the sorry, not the wrong way. That spray, like I said, it's called ultra low volume because they're very, very, very light. It's a mist, so it just drifts, and it's designed to drift through the backyards. Some of it will make it through the front yard, just depending on how much vegetation is there. But the higher the vegetation, the more likely there is to be biting midge populations harbouring in those areas. So if there's very light vegetation at the front, on the canal front, which there normally is, it's normally just lawn, and most of the vegetation is either down the side or at the front of the house, the road side of the house. That's the area that we're kind of targeting with this program.
That's it? Yeah, I'm going to come back to Councillor Munn. Is it about that? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Taylor. Are you okay, Councillor Munn? You're all right with that?
Sorry, I'll go back to my next question. I suppose my question in relation to this is most of the challenges that residents have is because they're sitting out the back, and that's where the initial impact is, and this is out the front. Has there ever been a consideration of doing the spraying from the water side, so it's spraying back towards the sand?
So good question. Can we do the misting from the water side?
Through you, Chair, the problem with that is the water still. So we are still spraying an insecticide from these trucks. That is still toxic to aquatic life. I guess one of the benefits of being able to do it from the road is that it's further from the water. I haven't. I think the issues would remain the same. A lot of the same issues with the larviciding program if we tried to adulticide from the water, being the marine grade licences, the tides, the wind, the early mornings, etc.
Okay. Sorry, can I have a follow-up question on
Of course
that?
you can.
Sorry. I suppose I'm interested in, there's a lot of private enterprise out there doing this fogging now that we've reduced our program, and you're most probably aware of them. I suppose I've got two questions because they
So
are
just to clarify that, those underlying comments, I don't think we have reduced our program. It looks like we've actually increased our...
Sorry, since we stopped the programming of treating the midges at the source.
On the sand?
On the source, yeah. So that my point is there's other private enterprise out there doing it at the moment, and they're actually doing it from I'll say the sand side. I suppose for my two questions is, from what you've just said, is one, you have a concern for us being there because of the chemicals, and two, do these companies that are doing this, do they have an obligation to meet some environmental...
So the claim is that private entities are injecting some sort of...
Not injecting, fogging.
Oh, okay. So are they doing what we were doing, like getting it underneath the sand, or just doing it on top?
They're doing the fogging. So I suppose the question for me initially was, why can't we do it from the beach side?
Because other companies are.
No, and the concern was there's still chemical concerns with doing it from marine. That's what I just heard. My question is, I know private enterprise are doing it from that side, so it raises, not for our perspective, a concern of what are they using, and do we have a controlling measure on that as well?
Through you, Chair. Good question, Councillor. I think there would be a fairly significant difference in the methodology because, as I understand it, they would be employed by a single homeowner or maybe two at the most. So they would be able to get access through the resident's property down to the beach and then fog back towards the property, whereas we would need to do hundreds of houses in one run, and that would require using a boat and trying to get the fog through to hundreds of houses from the boat side while avoiding the water. So I can understand why private contractors might do that. They are, I would assume, using the same products that we are, and they should be abiding by the label restrictions the same as we are, but I don't have any...
And would it be fair to say that we wouldn't be the regulatory authority that govern their conduct anyway? Is that
correct?
Yeah.
Sorry, I suppose I was just interested in if we had a fogging program from a boat scenario. I get we can't get into everyone's house, but I saw the machine that we saw that's actually injecting. I'm sure with the big equipment out there would be able to fog from a boat. I'm only just asking the question. I don't know. It's just the question: is there a boat method to fog from the water side that would improve? The problem. I'll leave that with you.
To answer your question, there's no reason why we couldn't mount a fogger on a boat. I don't think it would be as effective as doing it from the street.
Okay.
Take it.
Yep. Is that okay? Yeah, Councillor Martin, you're up.
Thanks, Chair, and Councillor Taylor. And asked the question I was going to ask, but in terms of complaints, when a resident contacts us, can the city do the fogging in the street on request, or how, if there's a few residents, or is it programmed, or how responsive can you be to complaints?
We try and be as responsive as, through you, Chair, we try and be as responsive as we can. It takes into account customer requests for sure. If we're getting a lot more requests from an area, we know there's a problem in that area. But we also do our own surveillance trapping, so we do have a bit of an idea. And as I mentioned previously, we know there's peaks in biting midge adults that we can target as well. It really does depend on all those things, as well as what other work we've got on. If there's a huge mosquito problem, that's going to compromise how much we can do in canal-based areas, and it's an open-ended sort of discussion as to what we give priority to, but we try and be as responsive as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, could I just go back to Councillor Taylor's question about fogging from the water for a minute? Just something else that occurred to me that I haven't really outlined is one of the other issues from the boat is you've got a concentrated chemical sitting in a boat on the water. That would be the same requirement for fogging. So you have to have chemical in the boat. So it's just an extra risk that if anything happened, the chemical concentrate could end up in the water. So again, it's just more difficult from a boat than it is from a truck mounted sprayer.
Because the chemical stored in the boat is a concentrate that mixes with the water of the canal, and that dilutes it such that when we spray it, it's not at that concentrated level. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. In order to be able to do, enough water, you pull the water out of the body of water you're in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the canal boats, boom boats are set up that way at the moment.
Yeah.
So we would have to do the same thing with a fogger, but you're limited with the amount of chemical you've got in there. So you carry concentrate, and then you have to mix it on water to try and get the area done that you need to get done.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one more final one, if possible. Is it possible, what you said is the investment has actually increased in the fogging, so we've really moved to fogging, and I can thank the team because I know when we've got complaints, the team have got out there to those areas. Have I got something that at least I can give to the community that shows what the fogging program looks like and what it looks like now? So my understanding there's been an increase.
Yeah, that's good.
So as I said, the team's been a great job, but
there was a graph you showed before about the increase in fogging that's been able to be delivered as a result of the reduction of the larviciding. Can we get further information, particularly for those divisions that are in the graph, for where and what routes though that extra work has been undertaken in?
Certainly.
Yeah, and maybe can we do that before full council? Can we get the distributor before then?
I'm not sure when full council is. But...
Through the chair, when is the next full council?
Thursday next
Wednesday
week.
2nd of April.
Yeah. Thursday week.
Oh, sorry, Thursday 2 weeks away.
Yes, we can commit to that. We'll look at it around the general provision of information as well that we discussed earlier when we talked comms and engagement.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Thursday before Good Friday, is that
Yes.
right? That's our next council meeting. Yeah, cool. Is that enough time?
Yes, that's fine.
Before Easter? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks for the great, obviously everyone's really interested in this issue, so it's been great having good questions. Does anyone want to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Curtis has moved the officer's recommendation. Councillor Wilkinson will second that. Councillor Curtis, do you want to open debate?
Sure, thank you. And I'll start by thanking the officers for the presentations. I particularly found this really valuable for my understanding of both the previous program, what its limitations and constraints were, but certainly what it's evolved to now. I grew up on the canals here, so midges have been something that I've been familiar with since my childhood, but it's interesting to navigate people who move here and experience them even for the first time, and better understand what we can actually achieve through external treatment measures is really helpful. And this information, I've already printed off a few copies of this report and I've got them in the office and we'll be taking them to the community group. So I really thank you for the detail and I hope my council colleagues support the motion.
Does anyone want to speak against the motion? Does anyone want to make some remarks for Councillor Tyler?
Thank you for the report and thanks for the feedback. As we know, the Gold Coast have got a lot of canal states, which a lot of other areas don't, as mentioned earlier in your presentation. I think it's a service that we've always monitored and done a great job of the city, and I think the city has been very responsive in this. The fact that we're going to continue to have mosquitoes is going to be an ongoing challenge for the city, and as we grow, I suppose more and more people are going to be more aware of it. But highlighting the program and community consultation is really important, and the fact that we can show the community where the improvements or the change has been would make a really big help to the community, and also support the officers in the way you have reacted, particularly in the last 6 to 12 months when we've had complaints, to ensure that our residents can enjoy the beautiful waterways that we have all over the Gold Coast.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Question, Councillor Martin?
Sorry, just wondering about the reporting. Like the treatments and requests are really great to see, and you've got the years. Is there already an annual reporting on this, like that we might get 2026? Or is there an appropriate time that we could continually get that
So
report?
yeah, I probably would prefer it didn't just be midges though. Is there an annual report we could seek relating to mosquitoes and midges maybe together?
Through the chair, yes.
Yeah.
If that's something the councillors would like to see, we could come back with an annual
Get Darren back,
update
have a
on
cake,
mosquitoes and midges and the program that's been run, because it's data and information that we track.
I agree, and I agree with that. It could be a bit broader, but pests and treatments that we've got going on, it'd be great to kind of have that annual reporting to track that.
Great. Well, I don't think that necessarily needs to be part of the it can be operational in nature. But just so we're really clear on what has been resolved today, obviously the resolution speaks for itself, but just as part of, just an acceptable request kind of process, we've asked for some information about midges and probably mosquitoes that could be potentially shared on social media to inform residents. We've talked about the routes. So each of the divisions that have got, areas where we treat, we want to see what those routes look like. And Councillor Taylor asked a little bit about the change in service area that has been as a result of the redeployment from the larvicide programming into the UVL. So they're the things, and then an annual report. Even though that's not in the resolution, I just want to put it on the record that they're things we've asked for that I think should form part of your operational response.
Through the chair, in terms of the annual update, would it be acceptable to the councillors for us to come back when we do with the biosecurity plan update? It kind of becomes a broader vector and biosecurity services update.
The short answer is the biosecurity plan piece once a year is a legislative responsibility that should be treated differently to this.
Yes.
So I don't mind when you do it as chair, but as long as there is an annual report that talks about it. My gut feeling is it probably should be, I know, having served on the regional mosquito management group over many years, I appreciate some of this work is seasonal.
Yes.
And so I'd suggest that as we get to the end of a season and we're able to collate data about the mosquito season, it would be great to, within a month or so of that the report be tabled then. That's probably the best time.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So I have a mover in Councillor Curtis, a seconder in Councillor Wilkinson. Does anyone else want to speak to the matter? All right, I'll take the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Darren, thanks again. You are a legend. Do you mind me asking, how long have you been serving the city now?
35 years.
Goodness gracious. Thank you for your service. And I was really pleased to serve with you in the regional mosquito group for that many years. And I know that you're very professional in what you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor. Thanks, councillors.
There's no other matters that I'm aware of. Does anyone else have general business they want to table from the floor? No. I'll declare the meeting closed at 10:34.